When I see how Panasonic approaches their camera design, I really wish everyone looked at image making the same way they do. All their modern cameras are really quite excellent at all types of image capture and give both photographers and videographers something to be excited about. Now, the GH5 is a video camera first and photo camera second, and the G9 is a photo camera first and video camera second. But where they differ from others is that the dip between the first and second is not a steep one. The GH5 makes great photos, and there are just a few video capture options on the G9. Well, few compared to the GH5, but you have everything you need here for basic videography, perhaps a little bit more. You have both 24 and 30p, and then you're gifted 60p in both 1080 and 4K. Additionally, you have high frame rate options in 1080 up to 180 frames per second. You don't get the plethora of iterations on those options like you do on the GH5. You don't get 10-bit capture, and you don't get vlog. But as a stills camera first, I'm okay with all that. Besides, against other stills first cameras on the market, this is easily the most full-featured. In fact, it's still the only stills first camera other than the 1DX Mark II to offer 4K 60p. Actually, come to think of it, it's really only the third camera in this body type that offers it, the only other one being the GH5/GH5S, so that's great. As you can see, the footage looks crisp, clear, and vibrant. You might also notice some white balance shifts that came as a result of using auto white balance. I eventually turned that off and settled on a consistent white balance setting. It seems a bit more finicky and prone to adjustment mid-shot than other Panasonic video cameras I've used, but it's also possible I was just shooting in an environment where such shifts were more noticeable. On that same note, the autofocus was good, but I felt it tried to hunt for an in-focus target too frequently, rather than settling on something for a time before looking again to make sure it was in focus. This, as with the white balance, may have just been my shooting conditions. I eventually opted for manual focus for much of my shooting, as I normally do with video cameras. Alright, so now that we know how to make coffee, let's take a look at some of the video settings that you can shoot with on the G9. As mentioned, you have three options in 4K, 24p, 30p, and 60p. Each of these looks pretty much identical in terms of quality, so feel free to use them as you see fit. This is especially good news specifically with 60p, since blending slow motion shots with your regular speed shots is going to look very nice, clean, and without a visual loss in quality. In full HD, you have four options, 24p, 30p, 60i, and 60p. Side by side with the 4K counterparts, the 1080p footage does not seem to suffer from quality loss like is common with just about every camera out there right now outside of the GH5, GH5S. This is a clip that shows the 180 frames per second that you can choose to select as the Hfr mode on the Lumix G9. Now, when you're in this mode, you are in 100% full auto and you can change nothing about it. And it always defaults to 30p, already slowed down. So it's a kind of a limited mode and the quality is questionable, but it is there if you want to use it. Lastly, let's look at how ISO performance is on the G9. Unfortunately, it's not very impressive. Quality is very good through ISO 3200, but once you get up to 6400, it starts to break down. On the plus side, 6400 and 12800 are the top two highest ISOs available, so it's not like you have a lot of options given to you above where the ISO shines best. On the downside, this performance is about even with what I expected out of the old GH4, and really limits what you can do in dark environments where you cannot control the lighting. For a camera that has done very well up to this point, it's quite disheartening to see the G9 stumble here, especially when you can look at the GH5, a camera from this same generation, to see considerably better ISO performance. So it's not like Panasonic couldn't do it, it's just for some reason not shown here. One final thing as we go through the last of these ISOs. For some reason, the Panasonic G9 stores files very weirdly. If you shoot in 1080, they will not be in your regular file folder. You'll have to find them in the AVC HD folder, which is really weird and totally unintuitive. I hate that this is the only way to go find your files, and if I didn't know better, I would probably assume I'd lost them. For a more in-depth review of the G9, make sure to head over to imagingresource.com.